Welcome to the Chief Strategy Officer Podcast, a collaborative space for the architects of corporate success, chief strategy officers. In today's interconnected world, no single leader has all the answers. Here, we foster a platform for knowledge exchange where executives who lead strategy can share their unique experiences in tackling complex challenges, navigating disruptive technologies, and driving impactful growth. The CSO role can be lonely and misunderstood, but what if there was a network dedicated to your success? Outthinker Network provides a supportive community of leading chief strategy officers offering time-saving solutions, trend insights, and invaluable peer connections. Visit outthinkernetwork.com to unlock the full potential of your role. Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits is the largest wine and spirits distributor in the United States, serving over 240,000 customers across 44 states and the District of Columbia. It is also one of the largest family-owned businesses in the U.S. Their strategy office is doing remarkable things that push the boundaries that define most strategy offices. And in this podcast, we get to hear firsthand from their head of strategy and two of the leaders of their Office of Strategic Management, or OSM. Stephen von Oehsen is the SVP of the Office of Strategic Management, as well as a professor and member of the Dean's Executive Advisory Board at Florida International University's Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. Sasha Rubin is a VP of Strategy and Business Development at the OSM. Kyle Weiss is a senior manager in the OSM. In this episode, we cover the surprising roles that the OSM plays, including why and how they became a lightning rod for talent, and the unexpected benefits of taking on this role, how Southern Glazer thinks about managing the culture of their office, and how the culture differs from typical strategy offices and consulting firms, the specific phases through which the strategy office evolved, why it evolved, and what it took to adapt and expand its impact, why they decided to launch what they call extended enterprise strategic services, through which they consult not just to the company, but to partners, and how they manage this activity. How to both hold on to the unique consulting toolkit and way of thinking that the company needs the strategy office to bring, while at the same time blending with the language and norms and culture of the company. Ladies and gentlemen, three of Southern Glazer's leading strategists, Stephen von Oehsen, Sasha Rubin, and Kyle Weiss.
Stephen, Sasha, Kyle, thank you so much for being here with us. If each of you could just briefly introduce yourself. We know that you all are with Southern Glazer. Let's just start with Sasha.
Sure. Sasha Rubin. I'm a vice president of strategy at Southern Glazers. In my role, I've supported the development of the company's 2030 vision and strategy and the execution of a number of business unit strategies and transformational investments. Before joining Southern, I worked as an M&A consultant at PwC New York and in small supplier development out of Walmart's Mexico City headquarters. Excited to be with you here today.
Excellent. Yeah, wow. Kyle.
Yep. So Kyle Weiss, I'm a senior manager of strategy in this Office of Strategic Management team that we work on. I'm sure we'll get into it pretty shortly here, but our team works across a wide variety of projects that typically fall under three primary pillars. So supplier strategy work, enterprise initiatives and functional strategy, and strategic leadership meetings and meeting support. And I'm fortunate to be sort of a generalist working across all three of these pillars that we support. Prior to Southern Glazers, I worked in the cruising industry with Carnival Cruise Line and Carnival Corporation, where I worked on their corporate strategy team after a 2-year rotational leadership development type program.
Great. Excellent. And Stephen.
Hey, Kaihan. Good to see you. Stephen von Oehsen, Senior Vice President of the Office of Strategic Management. I head the group, founded and lead the group, and have led it over the last going on 20 years. So happy and excited to share with you some of the evolution of the team over time. I'm also an executive in residence professor at FIU's Chaplin School of Hospitality and Hotel Management. and also a founding board member of the HEAD Alliance for Hospitality, Equity, and Diversity. As Kyle indicated, we operate in several areas: business development, strategy execution, senior leadership meeting, kind of planning and execution, corporate strategy development, as Sasha was speaking to. And then also, as kind of the through line across all of these areas of activity is really about serving as an on-ramp of high quality, diverse talent that really fuels the successful execution of this strategic work over time. And so we look forward to sharing with you a little wisdom from our years of doing this.
That's great. And that's what I wanted to dig into first, Stephen, because you guys have an 85% retention rate, less than a 1% attrition rate. You not only attract and retain great talent, but your office is, as you said, like an on-ramp to distributing talent internally. And so could you just talk to us about why that, because that is not a common function of the strategy office. How did you come to realize that that was something that you could do?
Yeah, I think to start, I really need to start with a quote from our chairman, Harvey Chaplin, who sadly just passed away yesterday at the age of 95. So just literally passed away yesterday. And I want to actually dedicate this podcast to him because he is, the reason I'm at the company, along with his son, Wayne, and a number of other close colleagues. But he was someone who just really inspired me. I'd worked as a management consultant with Kearney Consulting and CSE Index before that for the decade before I came here. And making the decision to go native, as they say, I'd worked with Southern for about 4 years as a management consultant, was really the faith and admiration I had for Harvey and Wayne. And so, I wanted to open with a quote of Harvey's. He's got a lot of great quotes, but one of my favorite of his is that people are most strategic and important asset. And, I think when I heard him say that, when I heard him say, hire the best, compensate them fairly and empower them and then get out of the way. And that was a philosophy that I embraced. I, have tried to build a team of truly great, talented people, but people also for whom this business, this company, even this region is part of their purpose and aligns with how they want to live their lives and how they get meaning. And that, to me, is kind of a key recipe for being able to attract a very diverse and rich team that makes me look fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Does. Yeah, I want to get into kind of the benefits of having these alumni in the organization. But first, I'd like to ask Sasha and Kyle, like you have worked in consulting and strategy functions at other companies. For each of you, how was your experience of being interviewed and onboarding and working in the strategy office of Southern Glazer? How was that different than what you've experienced other places?
When I interviewed with Southern in 2017, I was actually in the recruiting process with another Fortune 100, I'll say, corporate strategy team. And the differences between them were just night and day. At Southern, I interviewed with every single member of the strategy team, which is, I think, very unique. I remember I went to lunch with Stephen, who really took the time to share with me his vision, listen to me about my experience and where I wanted to go with my career. And I felt like that's what marked the team. They took the time to understand my background, capabilities, and as Stephen just said, my purpose. So the other process felt much more anonymous, like they were just kind of looking for another MBA to fill the role. So the human component and the fact that at Southern they were interested in me and our mutual fit really became the difference.
Kyle, how about you? What was your experience like?
Yeah, so I'll actually speak to more of the once onboarded and on the team as opposed to the interviewing recruiting process. I think Stephen mentioned a really important aspect of our group, and that's the seemingly rotational nature. And I think that's driven by the diversity of the projects that we work on and the different groups that we support. So I actually started my career, as I mentioned, with Carnival Cruise Line in their rotational leadership development program, where I similarly bounced around between different groups. So finance, operations, strategy, etc. And The group that Stephen has built over the years is essentially a rotational program on steroids, right? Where we rotate and drive the business and support some of the most strategic challenges with the most senior levels of leadership. So I think the beauty of this sort of rotational dynamic for the group that we work on is truly the level of exposure that it offers to the people on the team. And that's exposure to different functions across the organization, exposure to different challenges, different leaders, and different leadership styles, which I found to be very valuable after joining the team. And it's particularly beneficial when you're earlier on in your career, because it not only allows you to understand what it is that you enjoy doing and enjoy working on, but it also allows you to understand the things that you don't want to do, which is arguably more important as you kind of navigate your career. So
how do you determine people like Sasha and Kyle and 20 or so existing team members we have today, the 23 or so people that we have forward integrated into executive roles at the company? How do you sift out these needles from the haystack? And there's a really kind of important process, and it's not rocket science, but it's not nothing. And I kind of learned this process when I was back in consulting, and a professor from Kellogg, where I'd gotten my MBA, Marty Stoller, he said, he came in to speak to the first firm I'd worked at, CSC Index, came in to say, look, clients are making two basic assessments when they pick consultants. Can you do the job? And do I want to work with you? And I've learned over time, those two things will get you really quality people in the door. But there's a third question that really is the one about enduring strategic value, keeping people around for the long haul, having them make a career here. And that's really about the person's individual purpose and its fit with our culture and purpose on the team and at the company and in the industry. And so we always ask that third question: do you want to work with us, and why? Why is this role a good fit for you? This question is one of those things where you can really tease out if someone's looking at this as just a stepping stone and they're going to be looking for something new in 18 months to 2 years, or if this is, hey, I got my W set, number 2, I just went to, this Wine Spectator conference, I'm really into wine, I'm really into spirits, I'm really into hospitality. This isn't just I'm looking for a paycheck, but I'm really looking to build a career somewhere. And that has been like a key differentiator. And I really recommend my fellow CSOs think about those 3 questions, not just their capability set, not just, how they fit with our way of working, which in our case is highly collaborative and, working very closely with our clients, but also how is this going to feed them over time? Because that's the key for retaining people in the long haul.
Yeah, it's interesting because the consulting background that many of you have come from, it depends on this forced churn, the pyramid, the up and out. In your case, you do have sort of a pass through, I won't say out, but you have over 20 alumni that are now inside the company. And I think that is a very different mindset than most strategy officers hold. So talk to us about why that is a good thing. What are the benefits, if there are, of having these alumni out in them?
I'll get started, but certainly Sasha and Kyle chime in. But, to me, it's sort of enlightened self-interest. By having these alumni out there, these are all people who kind of, meet those 3 criteria that I talked about, can do the job, they fit with our ways of working, our culture, and we fit with their purpose. And so you basically have allies. You have ambassadors who are out there. So when you're doing strategic initiatives, I'm telling you, I'm on calls all the time, every week. And, if there are half dozen people on the call, oftentimes 3 or 4, sometimes 5 are alumni or current members of my team. And you know what? It makes executing those strategic initiatives that much easier because you know how to work together. You have a common ethos. You have a common approach. We've all been through the same problem-solving methodology training. We all know how to manage projects. We all know how to do change management effectively. So you basically have an extended team. I have my, the 20 in OSM today, plus the 20 or so alumni. Now you have an army of 40 people who are helping you deliver strategic value for the company.
Yeah, I imagine that you have a common vocabulary and you have trust as well.
So Sasha and Kyle, I don't know if you want to add anything in on maybe even some examples that you've experienced, with working with our alumni.
I mean, I was going to speak to the same thing that Kai-Han mentioned about the vocabulary. I mean, you're already speaking the same language. You're talking to somebody that developed the same consulting toolkit that you are currently developing or have developed as well. So you don't need to spend time talking about what should a project charter entail, right? This person that you're supporting is already aware of that, and they already know the things that are going to go into that. So you can really get down to business and talk about what this project is that we're helping to support.
Yeah, in a way, it's almost like having an army of translators who speak both languages. The strategic problem solving kind of structured language that we bring to the table, and the language of our tenured business partners who've been in the industry for 30, 40 years sometimes. So I love working with them. They're a great first phone call, just, to brainstorm with and certainly to partner with on projects.
Sasha, that's a really good point, because when we first started and there were just 5 of us, it really was like we were aliens, like, the so-called intelligent Martians coming to this new planet of people. These are like, street handlers, as Harvey used to call them. They're hagglers, handlers. They're in the streets fighting it out with the competition day in and day out in liquor stores and package stores. And we were these MBAs. I think, I was certainly the first hire at the company at the corporate VP level that came from outside the company and outside the industry. And that was like a big, it wasn't clear whether the graft was going to take, And so you're exactly right. And initially, I didn't really speak the language. I'm really into vocabulary and using 10-cent words. And it didn't work with this crowd. You had to keep it kind of direct and straightforward and short sentences and punchy, or they would just lose interest in it and they wouldn't pay attention. So it was really a matter of being able to relate to them and communicate with them. So I think, Sasha, it's a really good point. Now that we have some of our alumni out there, it's a little easier to communicate.
Yeah, if I could double click on that. So if you're an external consulting organization, whether you're captive or not, or part of the organization or not, you can kind of have your own vocabulary, your own culture. You go in, you leave out. But in your case, not only are you staying with them longer, but your people are becoming part of the organization, right? So, and yet you're expected to bring in this unique vocabulary, mindset, perspective, all that. So given that, if you were building a consulting firm, there would be a set of capabilities and norms that you would develop. But given this is not an independent consulting firm, talk to us about the capabilities that you needed to develop that are maybe different than one would expect if one was looking at it as just a consulting firm.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, Kai-Han. And this is something that in the last year or two, we've started sort of laying out the evolutionary path of our internal consulting / strategy team. When we started the company, you got to kind of follow, as Maria Montessori says, follow the child. Well, I don't know, Peter Drucker would say this, but follow the company where it's in its stage of evolution. And when we joined the company, I was working as a consultant for 4 years before I came on board, from 2001 to 2005. And then in 2005, when I came on board with just me and 4 other consultants from Kearney, the company was really a mid-market wholesaler, privately held. I think it was like number 35 or something on the Forbes list of privately held companies. And it was looking to grow its top line, looking to grow its footprint. And so everything was about growth and share. So where this all really started was an epic, really industry-changing transaction that happened when UDV acquired many of the assets of Seagram's in a merger and became Diageo, the largest wine and spirits company in the world. And Diageo wanted to consolidate its route to market in the United States. And to do that, they did a sourcing program of their downstream wholesalers, which is kind of funny because sourcing is normally upstream. But they did a sourcing program to consolidate route to market. And Southern was the big player, but it was a still pretty diffuse industry at that point. I think we had about maybe, 10% share. And, we bid aggressively. It was kind of Wayne's vision to align with them across our 11 market footprint at that point. And we won more than our fair share. But that early phase of our evolution was all about turning high potential talent from the outside into high performing talent to grow the top line of the company. So that was kind of stage one, high potential talent to high performing talent, and really focused in on where the company was at with its strategy, which we helped develop and document for the first time in its history back in 2004, to grow the top line, grab share, move into new markets, and create a national footprint. So that was stage one. Quickly went into stage two, around 2010, 2011, which was really about building distinct competitive capabilities. So as we started to grow our market space, we wanted to have a consistent, high quality set of capabilities in marketing, selling, and service. And service means kind of the supply chain operations and delivery service. And so there was a lot of investments made by the company to build those out to be superior to our competitors. We didn't make the suppliers take our word for it. We actually hired market researchers to go talk to our customers and say, yes, Southern is best in these areas. It's not just they're saying it, we believe it. And that made it very compelling for our customers and our suppliers to move their brands over to us and our customers to give us a greater share of wallet. And so we continued the growth of the top line and market share, but while investing increasing amounts into our capability set to try to put even more distance between us and our competitor. Then we move on to stage three, which I'm going to pass the baton to Sasha to tell us about that.
Sure, Stephen, thank you. So stage three really kicked off when Southern and Glazer's combined in 2016, bringing us to a 46 market footprint. OSM led both the all-in national alignment deal with Bacardi, which was an antecedent and trigger for the combination. And then subsequently, we led the IMO to oversee the bringing together of the two companies, something I was familiar with in my prior role. So I joined the team at the beginning of this phase, along with several others. And together, we really saw OSM become that internal partner of choice for transformations. The most famous example being our first to the industry B2B e-commerce platform, Proof, which launched in 2019. Our team was actually tapped to lead the change management work stream for Proof, often the trickiest part, especially in an industry and a company with a lot of established processes and ways of working. So after all of the top line growth and alignments Stephen walked us through, this phase was really all about expanding the company's lead.
So just a quick tangent for 1 second, but relevant tangent. Carlos Vigil, an alumni of OSM, was the head of the SG Proof design and implementation. And so there you have, again, that a really tangible example of having that ambassador, translator, alumni in the field that we could work very closely with. And as Sasha said, develop and apply our change management methodology and approaches to great effect. In the process, by the way, saving the company untold millions of dollars in fees because, we had all the methodology. We just needed to translate it into, what worked for us. And we did that with Carlos. And it was wildly successful and has become kind of the blueprint for many other major transformational efforts we've engaged in.
And just to clarify, so at this stage that you're describing, Carlos is now an operator. He's an operator inside the business, no longer OSM. Okay, great. Excellent.
Commercial part of the business.
Great. Okay, so that's stage three. And so talk to me about stage four, which is, as I understand, where you are now.
Yeah, stage four really kicked off last year with the development of our new 2030 company purpose, vision, and strategic pillars, which we supported. Our team's scope now includes what we consider essential to be a leading distributor for the future. That means developing and executing explore and expand strategies internally and externally. So we're talking about doing that across product, service, insights, technology, supply chain, and extended enterprise consulting. So we're really excited about the value we can unlock as part of this next phase.
So how do you then decide? I mean, this idea of doing external work is pretty foreign to any strategy office that I'm familiar with. How do you decide when to do external work and not to do external work? And there must be all kinds of interesting complications, right, in terms of, aligning interests and things. So just my mind is buzzing a little bit. How do you make your assessment of what type of work that you're going to do?
So I think it's important to note up front that we don't do pure external consulting work, or at least not yet, we don't. When we say extended enterprise consulting, that typically involves engaging with one of our major suppliers that we work with and is usually done in tandem with a sort of internal consulting engagement with one of our dedicated divisions that supports said supplier. So it's really a combination of both internal and external work, but working in tandem. And we're kind of in the middle, working together on both sides to get to a desired outcome.
Okay, so I think I'm getting my head around it. If you could give me maybe a hypothetical or actual, if you want to share, situation, and what was the business rationale for engaging in that internal work?
Oftentimes, our team, OSM, is tapped when there's opportunities for improved ways of working between our internal teams and the suppliers that we work with. And these problems are typically multidimensional and lack a single obvious solution that can be handled under one roof and with one group. Hence why our team is brought in. So in a world where our group did not exist, this internal consulting type role, the natural course of action there would be to hire externally, right? So hire management consultants to come in and recommend solutions to whatever those problems may be, which, as we all know, can be extremely costly and oftentimes end with just a recommendation from the management consulting firm. Now, as you've heard us speak to, OSM consists of many former consultants and people with other diverse strategy backgrounds. So we have and continue to develop that consulting toolkit that rivals some of the top external management consulting firms. And so we believe that structured thinking of the consulting toolkit combined with our institutional knowledge of the business makes us a better and less expensive option than hiring externally.
Fascinating. So I'm just trying to get my head around this.
So 2 different suppliers, one domestic, one headquartered overseas. In one case, the supplier was seeking, kind of insight-driven, strategy-driven redesign of route to market in a particularly large footprint market. They were thinking of engaging one of the prominent strategy firms out there, maybe the one that I used to work at. And, Wayne, our CEO, said, hey, we have alumni from that firm as well as other great firms. And we do this kind of work all the time in terms of route to market design. Why don't you give us a chance to propose on doing the work? And they will play it down the middle of the road. They're going to do what's best for the relationship. And that means for both of the parties involved, Southern as well as the supplier. And sure enough, the supplier selected us and was extremely pleased, I think, of the work that we did. The domestic supplier, we had a kind of more of a, I would say, buffet opportunity, a number of different opportunities in terms of synergy efforts, as well as ways of working, and then PMOing all of the joint process improvement efforts we were going to do together. And we were brought in that capacity, again, supplanting an external firm, maybe the one that you used to work at, and that they were thinking of going out to bid with, until our CEO said, hey, we got this group that has a lot of people from prominent firms. We can do this work. We won't charge you anything for it. We'll both save some money, and we'll get, as Kyle said, really high quality consulting work, but that also has deep industry knowledge. So it's much more tailored to the need in this case than any external firm could provide.
So we're not charging them for it. And you are also kind of like, what would come up for me if I were an external partner of yours would be, well, if I go with an external firm, then they're fully motivated to optimizing for me. How do you get through the potential perceived, misalignment of interests?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think that's the point of this phase of evolution, this extended enterprise. At this point, we're really trying to optimize for the relationship. If anyone optimizes just on their piece of the relationship, it's going to be suboptimal overall. If it becomes a zero-sum kind of situation. So this is where they know we're being brought in to really play this down the middle of the road and really look for what's best for the overall relationship. And in some cases, that will mean the supplier benefits a little bit more than we do, but overall, that's the best solution. And in some cases, we might benefit. We try to find a balance in terms of the types of synergy efforts we work on so that everyone's getting something. But we also don't like to we've learned this from earlier in our experience, where we try to kind of share, well, if someone got a little more, then they share a little bit this way. We find it's just better to people to keep the benefits where they're obtained and just making sure that we have a good balance of opportunities that benefit both companies.
Yeah, I think we're in a really unique position where typically the divisions that we're supporting, we don't sure we work for the same company, but we don't necessarily have a vested interest in their particular business, right? So when the leadership team seeks out our expertise for these opportunities between our internal teams and one or multiple of our suppliers, it's absolutely critical that we played the role of the objective third party to secure buy-in on both sides, as Stephen mentioned. And so we have to demonstrate our ability to actively listen to the stakeholder groups on both sides with an unbiased ear, really, which can be difficult to do because we are obviously Southern Glazer's employees at the end of the day. But we do need to go into each of these types of engagement without preconceived notions about the topics that we are going to be addressing, and have to be fully transparent with leadership teams on both sides as we go through the process. And I think what we've found to be the best way to do this early on in the engagement to secure buy-in and trust on both sides is to do sort of a cross-company and cross-functional diagnostic, working with interviews across both parties, surveys, etc. And then our team will work to digest all of the feedback that we hear and develop a root cause analysis outlining key issues and their potential root causes, regardless of who may be responsible or we'll call it at fault. We kind of lay it all out on the table. And from there, I think it's pretty clear then how transparent we're being and that we're really engaged to solve the problems regardless of where the problem may have stemmed from.
So I want to transition that from, so now you have this very strange, very interesting Office of Strategic Management where you are not just doing internal work, you're doing external work. You're not just building an organization, you're seeding the organization with your talent. But now you're also working with external consulting firms as well. And you guys know how to work with external firms. You've been all from external firms, or a lot of you. What kind of tips do you have, or how do you leverage your expertise in managing external support to the benefit of the company?
We do manage external strategy consultants, the sourcing of them, the partnering with them when they're on site, and the transition to in-house management when they depart. And it really, I think, has been one of our most effective areas in terms of, because we do come from management consulting. We know the tricks of the trade. We know when someone's proposing a top-heavy project. We know when they're proposing a project that's too long. We know when they have overstaffed it. And we also know what capabilities we can bring to bear to help kind of right-size whatever team they're applying. But I think really what's been very important up front is during the sourcing process, when we send out the RFP, we ask for case studies, and we also ask that those case studies be referenceable clients. And we also ask that there be at least several people who are going to serve on our project who served on that case study. And so it really forces them not to just kind of throw, this glorious case study at us and then staff it with whomever they want to staff it, and not necessarily kind of give us the little bit of the bright, shiny bit over here and then, do a little bait and switch later. No, we want the case study to line up, and then we want to be able to call that client, check out what you say you did and how you did it, and that its relevancy to us. And we want to be able to ask about the people that you're going to be staffing on our project so we can check them out too before we go down the aisle with you. And it really has worked very well. And it's meant, sometimes we might be very familiar with someone because we just did a big project with them and they're bidding on a new area with us. And as much as we like and love them, as much as they answer question 2, yes, we want to work with you. And yes, they want question 3, they want to work with us. But maybe their capabilities aren't quite as top-notch as this other firm who has submitted a great proposal and a great case study and a great referenceable client. And we saw that happen recently on big digital acceleration project we did with one strategic partner on the outside. And then now a big project, North Star, a big ERP order to cash project. We're doing transformational project where we picked another strategic partner. And again, in each case, the selected partner was the whole package. They could do the job. We felt the way that they worked with us and that they worked with the referenceable client was superior, and that, they were in it for the right reasons. So it's this aspect of our work, our value proposition has, I think, proven very important to our leaders. And by the way, we also do, just a little aside, we do track our hours like we are an individual firm. So we can gauge for our leadership, not just, cost reductions that we get from negotiating the deals with our external consultants, but also cost avoidance by using resources that are much, much more reasonable without the markups that an outside firm has. So twice a year, we put together a business case. Here's how many hours we logged on work that if we didn't exist, you would have had to, outsource. And we take kind of a mid-market approach to the fees and rates. And, last year that was north of $10 million in avoidance. And then the actual savings from when our business people negotiated the best deal they could, and we came in to be the closers, we saved another $3+ million from, me knowing how to negotiate with these folks from the industry I came from.
Amazing. It's just such tangible, measurable impact, which is just, I think, the first level of the impact you've had on the organization and the industry by taking this long-term perspective. So I love this. I have so many more questions. The way that you have really embraced strategy as around the ecosystem, around the people, taking the long-term view, not just in the organization, but through your partners. So much to learn from here. So each of you, just to close, just to share, what is one piece of advice that you've gotten that we should take with us, or a piece of advice that you've given? And let's start with you, Sasha.
Sure. I think it comes down to who you work with and for is the difference maker. In my case, it's a large part of the reason I've continued to grow my career within the team rather than forward integrating out of it after 7 years. And I think for CSOs thinking about their own talent strategy, I'd encourage them to have that self-awareness for how committed they are to each team member's development and building a team culture that actually rests on collective intelligence. Those are intangibles that, to me, separate good teams from great teams.
Love that. Thank you. Kyle?
Yeah, so I'll speak to some, advice that I would give to people that are more early on in their career, like I am, when thinking about strategic roles or strategy office roles. And I think I often think back to something that my 8th grade English teacher said. And I actually don't even remember the context of when she said this, but the phrase that always stuck with me was that it's better to know a little bit about a lot than to know a lot about a little. And I think one of the things that I appreciate most about our strategy team is just the level of exposure to such a wide variety of functions. We're constantly learning a little about different areas of the business. And I think the word strategy gets thrown out there a lot in job titles and job descriptions. And oftentimes it's things that are actually, somewhat narrow in scope. So I think my word of advice for anybody seeking out a truly strategic role is to do your homework and to understand just how wide the team's exposure is to the rest of the organization, because I think that's where you'll find the most fruitful work.
Love that. I love that. The idea of range. Beautiful. Stephen, how about you?
Yeah, I think I'll end where I started. Harvey said people are, and I would argue will be, your greatest asset. And I think that applies to strategy, not just business on the whole. Before Harvey passed, I had taken a paraphrased quote from James Carville from the 1990s. Strategy is about people, stupid. At the end of the day, it's about, as Sasha was saying, it's about who you surround yourself with, bringing the best collective intelligence to bear, best problem-solving minds to bear, the best mix of relationship people. And to me, surrounding yourself with people that don't just look like you, but are kind of spike in areas that maybe you don't spike as high in. They can overlap with you in some areas that you spike high in, but having a really good, diverse blend. I know you did a prior podcast on diversity. We didn't really talk about that here, but I do believe in that as you're assessing your people needs, you cast as wide an aperture for talent. And that's how you get a really rich, diverse group of people to surround yourself with and to be successful with. Because at the end of the day, those are the people you're going to be relying upon to help come up with the best solutions to the challenges and opportunities that the company faces.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know there's so many aspects of the way that you have built this very unique office that we didn't touch on here. And I hope that we can have you guys back to touch on some of those other things. Sasha, Kyle, Stephen, thank you so much for being here, for the work you do, and for taking some time to share it with us. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank
Having
you.
us.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Chief Strategy Officer podcast. To join a community of strategy leaders, visit outthinknetwork.com/apply. Until next time, let's keep the conversation going and rewrite the future of strategy together.